romantic podcast through many creative outlets and passionate people doing some incredible things. Hello, I am Lord Orphetunes. You can find me at Orphetunes on most social media outlets. And I am joined by my forever co-host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
And Emily, I'm so sorry. What is your title today?
Oh, I was not prepared for this. Just call me Lady Emily. That will be fine.
Lady Emily.
That's
Emily,
acceptable.
Lady Emily, I am so incredibly excited for our podcast guest today. Would you like to do the honors of introducing our podcast guest?
I would love to. This is this is my old neighbor.
It's crazy.
Today we have Viscountess Hinchingbrooke, Julie Montagu on the show. Thank you for joining us, Julie.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. Just an FYI, everybody. Emily and I, before we went live, we were just chatting. I kid you not, we lived on the same street in Sugar Grove. We just figured that out. I mean, that's bonkers, isn't it?
My mind is still blown for sure. Yeah, I can't believe it. Same street, different side.
Same street, Blackberry Farm, Colonial Ice Cream, kitchen sink, all that stuff. Oh my gosh, that's bonkers.
Yep, I can't believe it. And Betsy and Katie, if you're listening, we'll chat later.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was such a cool surprise. And I grew up in the Sugar Grove, Illinois area and didn't think we crossed paths, but here we are.
Here we
crossing
are.
Paths. Right.
You're where you are on the other side of the Atlantic, and I'm in England. So there you go. It's brilliant.
Amazing.
I mean, I didn't grow up in Sugar Grove, but just watching the two of you like interact with that, it was like so many worlds collided because I'm sitting there watching, do you know this person? Yes, I know this person. Oh my God, do you know this person?
Yeah, pretty crazy. Crazy because, I mean, let's just be honest, everybody. Like Sugar Grove, Illinois. Who's ever heard of it? You know what I mean? It's like a dot. So it's less
pretty
than
much.
A dot.
Pretty much.
It's a speck.
But if you are in Sugar Grove, Illinois, you should check out Blackberry Farm because it's amazing.
Blackberry Farm is amazing. It's so true. So very true.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of Sugar Grove, like you're not in Sugar Grove anymore. So tell us about how you got where you are.
That's right. I'm not in Sugar Grove, Illinois, but it doesn't mean that I don't think about it. Maybe not daily, but I do think about it, especially when I meet a neighbor who was on the same street. Oh my gosh. So I am currently I moved to England over 2 decades ago, and I'm currently sitting in London. I go between London and a county called Dorset. Now, do you remember, of course, growing up in America, there's counties everywhere, and they're relatively small. I mean, they are relatively small. You know what I mean? You're in like sort of Kane County, which is the county that we were in, right?
Yeah.
And it would include a few sort of cities or whatever, towns. But in England, the counties are huge. There's not that many counties. So if you look at the state of Illinois, which is where we grew up, there's lots of different counties, right? Here, don't ask me how many counties there are in England, but there's not that many. But so I spend my time going between London and Dorset, which is a huge county, and there in Dorset, probably if you were to drop a pin in the most remote part of Southwest England, you would land on our historic house, which is open to the public. So we have a historic house that we run that's open to the public. We get about 20,000 visitors a year, and they come and see the collection in the house because the family I married into is quite a famous, well, the ancestors are quite famous, the Earl of Sandwich. So that is correct, everybody. Sure. Before you even ask, that famous snack that we all eat, the sandwich, came from my husband's ancestors. But unfortunately, back in the 1700s, you couldn't really trademark anything. And sadly, we didn't trademark it. So there you go.
That would have been quite a trademark.
Yes, I know, right? Exactly. So that's where I'm at. So I spend my time between Dorset and London.
Okay. And you're in London now.
I'm in London now. Yes.
Okay. And you have the show on YouTube, American Viscountess, which I have watched.
Thank you.
And you tell the story about how you met your husband, which I think is so awesome. Can
Yeah,
you share a little bit about
yeah,
that with us? Yeah.
of course. So I mean, I think that's sort of the starting point. It's how did I end up here? Well, I came over here for a job, and I had been to England once before, after graduation from college, and I came here with my mother for a trip, and I didn't like England at all. I think when we came, we just had really bad weather, and it rained almost every single day. And back then, when I say back then, that's a good 30 years ago, it was the food was disgusting. And listen, it really was not good food. And I've moved on. Food now in London and is actually, they have definitely improved multitudes of levels there. But when I came, I remember things standing out for me. So number one, I remember going to Harrods and thinking,
Oh,
what
yeah.
what is a sausage roll? What is shepherd's pie? I don't want any of that stuff. So I'll just have a cheese sandwich. True story. I get a cheese sandwich at Harrods, and the cheese was yellow. And I was like, why is this cheese yellow? Because of course I was used to Velveeta fake orange cheese, right? And actually the yellow cheese is the right color of cheese. That's the color
Right.
that cheese should be, right? So, and it was hard. And, I'm used to sort of the slippery, slimy Velveeta cheese that we all grew up with, having grilled cheese sandwiches. And I remember they put chutney on it. And chutney is sort of can be made with apples and raisins but it's good. I like it now, but it was a real, that is a traditional sort of sandwich over here, as a cheese and chutney sandwich. So I didn't like England because I was like, cheese is not Velveeta. It's hard. It had some weird thing of chutney on there. And I think the bread was quite hard as well. And it rained almost every day. So I just thought, I'll never come back here. Like, what's the big thing about England? And lo and behold, I take a job here. And yeah, so I take a job here, and meeting my husband, not through a setup, but through, happened to be at the same sort of like drinks party, if you like. And we ended up just being introduced, I should say. So we were introduced, and I think, really the rest is history. So the rest is history. And now I'm running a historic house with my husband. So there you go.
And doing an amazing job at restoration. And you're currently working on a room with you found letters from an Alberta.
Yeah.
Tell us about Alberta.
So Alberta so I'm doing my master's right now in country house studies. That is actually a thing. You can get a master's. In fact, you can even get a PhD in country house studies, but it's the study of these historic buildings and the different architectural periods. So, you can look at sort of medieval, Tudor, Elizabethan, Jacobean, Georgian, and when you go through and you sort of drive all around England and really Great Britain, of course, you can look at these different styles of houses, and by studying them, you're able to tell, oh, that's a Georgian house, or that's a Tudor house, or that's Elizabethan house. But it's much more than that. It's of course looking at the interiors as well, and understanding these fantastic interior designers of the times, such as Robert Adam or Inigo Jones, and their different styles. So with my dissertation, you have to choose, relatively speaking, something around a historic house. But lucky for me is that my husband's great-grandmother came over during what's called the Gilded Age. So if anybody out there has ever watched Downton Abbey, about the same time of period, and she's a lesser known American heiress because nobody studied her, and she wasn't out at these social engagements like, let's say, Consuela Vanderbilt or Duchess May, who was the Duchess of Roxburgh up at Flora's Castle, or even the Duchess of Manchester, who was basically a relation of hers. So Alberta, the extraordinary thing about Alberta Sturgis is that she came from Chicago, like me, had 4 children like me, and bizarrely, and this is
Wow.
what's so fascinating, is that she followed Swami Vivekananda, who was really kind of the first yogi to bring first guru to bring yoga to the West at the turn of the century. And so she studied the Bhagavad Gita, Jnana Yoga. It's incredible. And I'm a
Wow.
yogi as well. So we have almost this parallel life 100 years later. And she left an archive that is a bigger archive than I think anybody could have ever imagined. And because not only did she save all of the letters that were sent to her, and in particular, the 3 people that she wrote the most, her mother, her aunt, and her brother, she wrote them almost every single day. But after their deaths, because they 3 of them, those 3 died before she did, she asked for her letters that she sent to them to be returned to her. So we are now in the process of piecing together her extraordinary life. I have her diary from when she was aged 11, living in New York.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, and it's fascinating. And so, and just the other, and so what I did was there's what's called a muniment room. Now listen, many people out there listening to this will be like, what the heck is a muniment room? Let me explain. And this is, part of my studies on country house studies, sort of explaining this, but most historic houses, most of these old, incredible Tudor, Elizabethan, Jacobean, Georgian houses that were built, they've been in the family for hundreds of years, and they'll have what's called a muniment room, Muniment, and that is an archive room, and that's where all the family archives are held. And we have an archive room as well, but it has been in dire condition. There's so many, running a historic house, you are constantly repairing leaks or, having to restore big restoration projects that need a lot of time. And the muniment room just has been way down on the list, probably like number 197
Wow.
on the huge list. And so I decided to do a fundraiser for buymeacoffee.com. And I have been able to raise over the past nearly 2 months now, beyond the goal, but quite an extraordinary amount of almost $20,000. And that has bought the digital solutions, that has bought the fireproof storage. The whole room needs to be refurbished. It hasn't. It's in quite a state. Like it's not just a paint job. Yeah, it's electrical sockets. It is repairing the beautiful timber floors. There are water stains from decades of water stains all on the floor, all on the ceiling and the walls that it's just that need proper attention. And then of course it's furnishing it with the right period. So you can't just go to like IKEA and furnish it. You've got to be able. So we have, for example, an old Chippendale desk. And Chippendale is, of course, Thomas Chippendale is one of the most famous furniture makers of really the 18th century. And we have a beautiful Chippendale desk, and it is in massive need of restoration. If you think about it, it's 300 years old. It has never been restored. And,
Wow.
and so all this funding goes into a fund that is for the muniment room, and everything, we've got our accountants on this, where, everything that needs to be repaired or purchased goes through this fund. And it's been incredible, the outpouring of people who want to donate. But also I'm setting up a virtual volunteer program. So her letters are quite hard to read, and there's thousands of them, thousands of letters of hers. And so we have our first virtual volunteer program with about 50 people, most of them across the United States, ex-librarians, private and public collection managers, and they will help to transcribe her letters. So I'm documenting it all because, of course, I'm thinking, I want to make a documentary about this process, about the fundraising, meeting the virtual volunteers, going over to America, retracing her steps, and then writing my 25,000 words dissertation. And of course, a book is in there as well. So
Of
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the fundraiser, are you still fundraising? Like, could people still participate in
Yeah.
that by okay. Tell me how
Yeah.
our audience might do that.
So it'd be amazing, you guys, if you could. So, and the fundraising will end as soon as the immuniment room is finished, it'll be finished in about 3 weeks' time.
Okay.
So I'm still fundraising. I've done 3 different fundraising, and so I'm on my last one. So it's a small fundraising goal of just to purchase some more, again, more furnishings for the immuniment room, because you can't just bring, if you've got a Chippendale desk in there, you need to have like a wingback chair that's from, again, sort of the same period. You have to have a chandelier. So it's from the same period. So
Right.
it's buymeacoffee.com
Okay.
/ Julie J, because J is my middle name. Well, it stands for something called Jean Montagu, Montagu. And if you want me to put that in the chat, am I allowed to do that?
Yes, you are. Go for it. I was starting to type it, but you know it better than I do.
Okay, great. So I just go chat, but not the private chat, right?
The chat on the right. Otherwise, I can make it happen too. Either way.
Can you make it happen?
Yeah, I will make it happen. Go for it.
Here, I'm going to send it in the private chat to you, Emily.
Excellent.
Then you can copy and paste it.
Okay.
Great. You got it?
Yeah, I got it. We're good. Awesome.
Fantastic. Great.
I will share that then.
So given that that you've had such a parallel life to the first American Viscountess here, I kind of wanted to know, has she left any sort of manual should another American become the next Viscountess? Or has she left any recommendations or her insight to things as you've started researching her more?
Well, because she has so many letters, Trey, I haven't even scratched the surface. So I don't think she has. No, it's a really good question. I think that, we will be researching her entire life. But the one thing she did leave me, which is golden, and I've already been approached by a publisher saying, hey, can I publish that book, is as I was clearing out the immuniment room for the restoration project to begin last week, there was a Jiffy envelope. Do you call it Jiffy envelopes in America? I can't remember. Jiffy padded
like
envelope.
a manila. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went in, I pulled it out, and I was like, oh my, I literally stopped everything. And it is a cookbook, a typed up on old paper cookbook. And she because she was a big typer as well. I remember the turn of the century, the typewriter came to me, and it was, it was sort of this very cool thing. And she put together all of the recipes that were used in the house, and 115 of them. Everyone, it is amazing. Tons of like sauces and French recipes and ginger tea. And she's got one called Prince Regent's Punch, because I think it was George III's son who was referred to as Prince Regent. And so in the Georgian period, and the cookbook, everybody, is crazy, like insane. And I remember opening up the cookbook being like, I can't believe I literally just found 100-year-old cookbook and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I thought, oh my gosh, please let this be Alberta's. So I started thumbing through it, and it's not, remember in American and sort of the American and English vocabulary, we spell things differently, like color.
Yeah.
In America, it's COLOR. Here, it's COLOUR. So at first I was looking forward to see like if there was any Americanisms in there, but there's not. And the reason in the recipes that there's not is because she was copying them from French recipes that she had, and she was taking them from the chef, that they would have had. So she was taking the recipes that were being used and putting them in there. But everybody, first of all, there was a note in there that basically said that it was somebody had borrowed it in the 1970s, sent it back to my father-in-law, and wrote back saying, "This is fantastic. This needs to be published." I think that you said to me, saying to my father-in-law, that this was actually written by the American capital lady, which would have been Alberta. There's only one American lady.
Right.
And then inside the cookbook, it's brilliant, everybody. She cut out, we've got her scrapbooks, and she saved everything, and she does lots of cutouts from throughout her letters and stuff, American newspapers, tons of cutouts from American newspapers. And in there was a cutout from an American newspaper stuck on, and it was about frying, and it was a lady, and that was writing about it. And I don't know which American newspaper. I'm sure if I take the whole entire text, I'll be able to find it through meta tagging. But she was saying, well, the English cook that I sat with, the English cook said to me, no, this is how the English fry. So she cut out an article from an American newspaper of a lady who was with an English cook learning how to fry the English way. So yeah, it was pretty fascinating.
That is cool. That is so
Cool.
So this is going to be published now, yes? Say yes.
Well, yeah, I will say yes, but probably everybody, I've got to get through a dissertation, and then from the dissertation, of course, I want to write a book, and then it would, the thing would be alongside writing the book is then her recipe book. But yes. Cool.
Because I'd love to see that. That's so amazing.
Yeah, it's fascinating, everybody. It's golden. You know what I mean? Like, that is a treasure. But everything she left is
right. The next thing you'll find is that she grew up in Sugar Grove, Illinois.
I know, it's crazy. The one thing I do know, the crazy thing is I do know is that the aunt that she wrote to all of the time, who she was incredibly close to, almost closer to her aunt than she was to her mother, was born in Elgin, Illinois, and that's where my grandfather was born. So wow. I'm always like, I wonder if my grandfather knew her aunt. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, he wouldn't have, because my grandfather was born, he's not here anymore, but he was born in 1908. And so her aunt was born, sort of mid 1800s. So probably not, but still, yeah, quite funny. Elgin.
That's amazing. Yeah, Elgin isn't that far.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's what I'm saying. It's not that far from Sugar Grove.
Right. Very cool.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Emily.
Nope. No.
So Julie, a couple episodes ago, we spoke to a gemologist and a litany of other things who introduced us to a new word, the parure. And we wanted to ask you, do you have a parure, or do you have like a tiara, a set of bracelets, or anything as part of your current collection?
So I wore the Montagu family tiara. We do have a tiara, and we've had it looked at. And so I'm sure if you probably actually Google Julie Montagu tiara, it'll come up. It's on the internet. So we do have, and what we think happened, the tiara is beautiful, but at sort of the turn of the century. So the tiara has probably been in the family, I think when we had it looked at, around 250 years, but it's been added on. So it was quite a simple tiara, beautiful, simple tiara. And Alberta wore it on her wedding in 1905. And when I saw her wedding photo, I was like, bits of it looks like the tiara I wore, but other bits didn't. So what happened is, so people understand this, is that during the turn of the century, and I mean the turn of the 20th century, it was quite fashionable to add on to your tiara. Mm-hmm. So Alberta was married in 1905. And if you look at, and tiaras were worn for coronations, right? So they were worn for coronations. And let's remember, we had a coronation in Queen Victoria died in 1901. And then Edward VIII, I'm pretty sure died in 1911. But if I get it wrong, everybody don't skewer me.
They'll be okay.
But yeah, on Edward the Seventh, 1911. So there would have been a coronation then. Yeah, that and when we looked at it, we had it looked at, and that is the time that the extra jewels, which are like brooches and necklaces, old diamonds, were added to it, and that would make sense. So she would have been probably invited to that coronation of George the Fifth, and would have been invited to that. But then she would have worn that coronation for the coronation of George the Sixth. That's the late Queen Elizabeth's father, and that would have been in 1937, after Edward VIII abdicated because he couldn't marry Wallis Simpson. And then she would not have worn it to Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953 because Alberta died in 1951. So we believe that she was definitely, well, not 100% sure, but would have added on to that tiara in order to attend the coronation of George the Fifth after Edward the Seventh had died. That is what we believe had happened.
Okay.
Is there a way that someone can maybe distinguish from someone's like set of jewels or tiaras or whatever jewelry they're wearing? Is there a way to maybe visibly distinguish someone from being a baron versus a viscount or viscountess or a duchess?
Not on the tiaras. Tiaras are, you can do anything, but on the coronets, yes. So if you're a duke, you have a different coronet. If you are an earl, you have a different. If you are a viscount, you have a different coronet. And it's looking at the different sort of balls that are sort of on top. I should do a YouTube video about that one.
Yeah.
But yes, you can distinguish, absolutely.
Oh,
With them.
well, that's awesome.
Interesting. Sorry, Trey. We do this where I don't want to ask the question over the top of him, and he doesn't want to ask it over the top of me, and so we both pause.
Well,
I love it.
well, I'm going to go on mute, so you have to ask the question.
Oh, that's mean. Well, I was thinking about what you just said, and it's something that I imagine it's taken you some time to learn all of these intricacies and particulars about these things, and some probably out of necessity and some because of your own personal interest. And I'm wondering if there is some kind of, how do you learn them? Is there a manual, or like, does someone teach you those things, or do you
No.
just pick them up along the way?
I think times have changed so much. So perhaps when Alberta married into, the Montagu family, perhaps there was, an unwritten rule book. But let's also remember that these American heiresses who came over to marry into the European aristocracy, and Britain obviously is included in that, they were incredibly well educated by their mothers. They knew French or German, and they were fluent. They were, they played the piano or an instrument. They were writing in French, letters in French. They were, and so they kind of, I believe, knew what they were, because they studied it and they spent the seasons over here. They've been a part of it. So obviously we don't have that anymore. We don't have, American heiresses coming over here to sort of save the family seat. And so there isn't a rule book. And I think it's just learning on the go. But luckily times have changed. It's not that, you're in that world where you're curtsying all of the time, or you're not allowed to wear trousers as a woman. Whereas, back then Alberta would have never worn trousers, right? Ever. It was always a skirt or a dress. So I think it's definitely, we've moved on, which is a good thing. And obviously, especially for women, in particular for women, we're able to sort of do what we want to do and wear what we want to wear, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that is nice. So do you get you must get a ton of questions from Americans who want to know more then, like us. What is a question you get asked a lot? Like, what's the number one
The
thing that
question-
you're like, I've answered it so many times?
The question I get asked all the time is if I'm related to the royal family now that I married into it. And I
Oh.
always, the number one question I get, the answer is, I think if I had to really look at it, I think my husband is like number 768th in line. And so there you go. That's the answer. And that's because my husband's family origins are from William the Conqueror. So in
Okay.
1066. So there is this, and Edward the First. So there is that sort of connection, if you like. But I think that's the number one question. I think people get confused between, and I did as well, between royalty and aristocracy. And you have to remember that the aristocracy is different from royalty. Aristocracy exists because they were given titles because they gave favors to at the time, whoever the monarch was at the time. So they would give favors to the crown, and in return of those favors, they were given a title, a peerage, or they worked, they were working for for the monarch, as in, they were their sort of right-hand man, if you like, because it was men at that time. And so they were given these peerages, and that's why aristocracy exists. They were in favor, in favorable eyes of the monarch, and therefore they were given these titles. So there's really not necessarily, I mean, there is, of course, there's cousins, and you go back, it was all cousins and things like that. A lot of it was, but it wasn't like a direct line usually.
Right. And I looked it up, and there are 150 some viscounts out there.
Yeah.
So it's bigger than most people probably realize.
150 viscounts. I think that includes Europe, though, not in Britain.
There's okay. I think you're right. Yeah.
In Britain, no. I mean, there's only, I think, don't quote me on everybody, but I think excluding William and Harry, I think that there's only around 17 dukes in the UK. Yeah.
Okay.
Please forgive if this is a very cheeky question, but is it that sort of thing where, like in more of a celebrity sort of society, you get introduced to like this viscountess or this viscount or this duke and that sort of thing, and you all are very well acquainted with one another? Or have you met a royal or a nobility person that you're meeting for the first time?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's not like it was 100 years ago when Alberta was there, and, they were not only, but usually their social circles consisted of other members of the aristocracy or royalty. I mean, Alberta knew King Edward VII and knew George V and knew Winston Churchill. I mean, I have letters from her sitting next to him at dinner. That doesn't exist anymore. So it doesn't mean that we don't have friends that, of course, happen to have titles, and we do. And the reason, but we have, but they're not the majority of our friendship circle. And the reason that exists is these days, more so than not, is because most of these historic houses have to open up their doors to the public. And so they open up the doors to the public, and so we exchange ideas. We're all really part of a group, an entity called Historic Houses. So you've got National Trust over here, beautiful National Trust homes. Those were given to the National Trust. The homeowners, usually the custodians, that sometimes usually it's an aristocratic family, especially after the First and Second World War. They couldn't pay their taxes. They couldn't maintain the economic cost, if you like, of maintaining these homes, and so they would give them to the National Trust, and so they've become museums. Whereas Historic Houses, which is an association, is all privately owned and lived in houses, and a large percentage of those are open to the public but still lived in by the family. Whereas National Trust, there's nobody living in those homes.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that Mapperton is on Airbnb.
Yeah,
And so,
not the house. Just yeah,
oh, okay,
no.
maybe I
Mm-mm.
misunderstood.
No,
There is something on
no. We
Airbnb that
have
is called,
no, because it's an estate and we have cottages on the estate. One of the cottages is on
that's right.
Airbnb, so you can
That's
rent
right.
it. Yeah.
We're going to do that, Trey, right?
Uh, yeah.
Perfect.
On our UK tour, we'll do that.
Brilliant.
We have to go see Scott Mitchell too in Edinburgh. So it'll be quite the tour. So yeah, okay, because that's one thing I wanted to mention is that you also have an Airbnb, so that maybe it's not you. I don't know. Is it you and your husband have
Yeah,
that?
you can look at you can basically look at Mapperton on Airbnb and you'll find the cottage. It's really sweet. And
Okay.
of course, the Grand Historic Tours, as Sandra has just pointed out in the chat. So Grand Historic Tours is our new initiative, and I'll give you that, Emily, as well.
Excellent.
And that is where you can stay in the house, and we are staying in the house with you, and it's jam-packed black tie dinners. We'll be using recipes from Alberta's cookbook and doing black tie dinners in the house. It's limited to 12 people, drinks, parties, and then we have a tour guide for it, and she takes the 12 guests around to other historic houses, and they will have private lunches with, let's say, Lord Digby at Minturn. They will be having a private lunch with Giles Keating, who owns Athelhampton, which is an extraordinary Tudor house, absolutely extraordinary. So it's a real heritage tour. And and they'll embark on rewilding tours with us, tours of the house and the gardens with my in-laws, the Earl and Countess of Sandwich. So it's brilliant. So you can find out all the details there. We just launched our April 2024 because we have sold out within 3 days. We sold out of the October one, which is happening October 2023. But we've just opened up April 2024, literally like yesterday.
That's amazing. Well, good for you for selling out. That's
No,
cool.
we're super happy.
It sounds like quite an experience.
Seth, I know where we're going in April 2024.
Great. Perfect.
Right.
Oh, go ahead, Emma.
No. Can't make me.
So one thing, because it's this big blending of the American society and British society under one household, can I ask, how do you do that? And what do you do to maintain that sort of balance between British and American culture in your household?
It's a really good question. I just make sure that my kids I remind them that they're half American. And we always have Thanksgiving. So we've never missed a Thanksgiving. And every year my kids will always grow up having Thanksgiving in their households as well. So and my husband loves it as well, because he's like, oh, I get turkey twice within basically a month, because over here, Christmas is always turkey for Christmas. Whereas, in America, it's not you can have like goose or ham, or I remember having like Chateaubriand one year. You know what I mean? We don't, because we just had turkey for Thanksgiving. Here, it's always turkey for Christmas. And then the way the school system works over here is it's almost like year-round school. So we start the very beginning of September, and then we break up in the middle of July. So the school summer vacation, if you like, holiday, is just 6 weeks long. And so my kids are in school over 4th of July. And so I would always bring 4th of July cupcakes and cookies, red, white, and blue cupcakes and cookies to their school, so they know 4th of July as well. So yeah, I think it's a good mix. They know that I miss corn on the cob. The corn on the cob here is sorry. It's just anybody listening to this, you might be thinking, no, corn on the cob is good over in England. Well, it's average, but if you go to the Midwest, you've never experienced corn on the cob like we have. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's literally phenomenal. So, I miss corn on the cob. I wish my parents could send it over to me, but they can't.
Look, if I could take you back to Lincoln, Nebraska, I think I've had some of the best corn on the cob that I've ever had in the home of the Cornhuskers. So I,
Yeah,
I I'm right there with you.
Where it's
yeah.
grown, yeah. I was going to ask if you missed any foods from over here.
I would just say corn on the cob. So that's my, other than that, if you think of sort of the American food, you kind of, I mean, what is the American food? It's like burgers, hot dogs. I don't necessarily miss that. I don't, deep dish pizza from Chicago. I never really liked it because you'd have one slice and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so full. Do you know what I mean? Like one slice of deep dish pizza is too big. But corn on the cob is the thing, is definitely, I mean, right up. I mean, that's it. It's number one. That is it. I could live
Right.
off of corn on the cob.
It is good, yes. Yeah, and deep dish pizza is, I'm gonna get some enemies here, but I think it's a little overrated. You get like a whole pound of cheese in one slice, and I
That's
could never handle it either.
That's right. That's what it is. It's a pound of cheese in one slice, and you're like bellowing over afterwards. Like I feel, yeah.
I I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree with the Viscountess and my own co-host. Like that is slander. That is absolute
No.
slander.
Okay, well, you can have all of the deep dish pizza tray.
Yeah, you can have it all. You can have our share.
Right.
Done. Absolutely done.
What you mentioned rewilding, and I thought about you have those, they're, I don't know, I don't remember what you call them, but they're like pools of water that have floating kind of gardens on them.
Yeah,
And I think that's so cool. I love that you have these floating gardens, sorry, and that you can actually climb on them and weed
they
them
float.
or
Yeah.
yeah, that's really neat.
Well, what we try to do. So rewilding really isn't a word I don't think many Americans know. It's a big word over here. And this country is full force ahead in rewilding, and it's about giving back land to nature, letting nature take over. Since the 1970s, we have lost half of our species over here. And I don't know what this number is in America, but I assume it's very similar because of the over farming. And we are in a crisis right now. We are in a climate crisis. We are in a biodiversity crisis. And so we have about 1,900 acres, and it's beautiful and hilly, and where we are, it's marginal farmland. So we're not, of course, food production needs to happen, but on the right land. And so with our land, we've decided to do what's called rewilding, and we are bringing back native species on our land, which will help with biodiversity. It'll help. So we have beavers. We just reintroduced beavers on the estate, and beavers are fantastic. They're your friend. They help with damming. They help with flooding. They help with wetlands. We're also we just brought back what's a very native species called white part cattle. Looks very much like the Texas Longhorn, but they're free to roam. They have what's called no fence collars, but so we can track them, and they're excellent. They're like some of the best grazers. And so they're quite meticulous about where they graze. And then next month, we're bringing in Tamworth pigs, again, a native species here, somewhat died off, and they're fantastic at rootling. And then on top of that, we're bringing in Exmoor ponies, and they're brilliant at browsing all the shrub alongside. And them working together really helps to bring back that biodiversity. So your butterflies, your moths, your insects, but also helps to capture carbon in the soil. So we're looking at ways that we can, and it's called rewilding, and it's a massive thing over here because we're living in a crisis right now, and I believe so, and a climate crisis, and we are destroying our biodiversity, and it's about doing whatever we can, even if it might seem quite minor. It's actually, we've already seen a significant increase just through our rewilding. It's significant increase in butterflies and in moths and in invertebrates. We have ecologists going out and tracking it. So, and when you talk about the pool is 18th century, so 1700s, and it's almost the size of a Olympic sized pool, but it would have been built for a fishery. So, back in Tudor time, and to be fair, if you look at 18th century, it was more Georgian, and we had a historian come out and look, and he thinks it was possibly Tudor, but it's hard. Tudor, Georgian, but it would have been used as a fishery. So that's where they would have kept the fish, and then they would have eaten the fish. Now it's our all natural swimming pool. And, I don't want to swim in chemicals. I don't want to swim in chlorine. Like, why would I ever want to do that? And
Right.
you can use aquatic plants, and that's what those floating plant islands are for, because what happens is the way we built them is that the roots go down through the Hessian that's at the bottom of the floating plant island, and the roots then start to draw up the nutrients, and then they use the nutrients to grow. And the reason that's your natural filtration right there, because if you don't have if you don't have anything drawing up the nutrients, and using the nutrients, that's when you'll get algae on top. So in America and around the world, we're used to just putting in chlorine to kill that, right? But why not use those nutrients, and the plants can use them to thrive, and then they're taking the nutrients away, so the algae doesn't exist, because there's nothing for the algae to feast on. So you got this clear, beautiful, it's like swimming in a lake. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. I've seen people do that with fish tanks before, but I didn't quite understand why. And now I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. You get this, it's amazing. And I'd much rather swim in an all natural pool than have my body be submerged in chlorine and chemicals.
Of course. Yeah.
And
But it
smell
sounds
like
like
chlorine too.
right. And it bleaches your hair out and all that. Yeah. I can hear you typing.
Yeah. I know.
No?
No,
Oh,
I am.
interesting.
I am.
Oh,
So-
it's you. Okay, no, that's okay. Okay. Yes, we're good. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Thank you.
Speaking of that, I did want to bring up you're very busy, and I totally understand that. And I think that what you're doing is amazing. You seem to have so much energy, and I love it. You restored a house in Italy that you bought, and you're doing all of this restoration work, and the rewilding really interests me. I love that. Plus the dissertation and all of that. You do you have downtime? Like, what do you do? Do you do anything that's like, I just want to relax, and watch a show, or hang out with my
Yeah,
kids?
I do. I mean, it's such a good question, Emily. First of all, my house in Italy, because sometimes people are like, you are fundraising, and then you have a Patreon account for Matt Pretend you have a house in Italy. Anybody can buy a house in Italy, everybody. They're €1. No, I mean, I'm not saying
They're €1, really?
Do you know what I mean, go look at, just Google €1 houses. They're selling them off because the youth are leaving Italy, and these villages are suffering, and they want to entice people to come back. Now, I'm not saying my house was €1, but I can tell you this, that I wouldn't have been able to buy that house anywhere in England. Yeah. For the amount. Yeah. Listen, if you want to buy a house in Italy, everybody can buy a house in Italy. I mean, you really can. So,
Cool.
I did buy a house in Italy just before the pandemic started, and that funding from that came from an inheritance a very small inheritance that I came into, and also just a little bit of me saving some like yoga money, sort of on the side. And so for me, because I was given a gift, I didn't feel that gift was given to me. Therefore, I should do something with that gift that was given to me, and not inject it into Maperton, let's say, and because it was given to me, if that makes sense. I always want to clear that up with people. And that, I think, is a fair point. It was given to me, not to put into Maperton. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my downtime is yoga. So I am, that I did a 2.5, yesterday I did a self practice right in this room, and I practiced for 2.5 hours. Because once I get going with yoga, I don't want to stop. And that is a massive downtime. I mean, 2.5 hours in the middle of my Saturday.
Yeah.
is, and I it's not, but I do my downtime is yoga. So, and I try to do yoga, a class every other day. Of course, I teach yoga as well. But of course I watch, when I can, I watch films or I read a book before I go to bed, or I'm studying my Italian, things like that. So there is downtime, but the downtime usually exists late in the evening or in a yoga practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're definitely a go getter, and I love that. And so I get the no downtime.
Yeah.
Or almost no downtime.
It's there. It's there.
That's good. Balance is important.
In bits and bobs. Yeah, in bits
Right.
and bobs.
Julie, I know that you are incredibly busy here, but I would like to ask you, would you be up for a little bit of a lightning round question and answer?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay, awesome. Emily, feel free to join in.
Yeah.
So these questions, feel free to give the answer that first comes to your brain. You're more than welcome to explain your answer, or you can just leave it at the answer that you provide. First thing that I would like to know is, who is one person of nobility or royalty, whether alive or dead, that you would like to have tea with right now?
Well, Alberta Sturgis, the 9th
Yes.
Countess of Sandwich.
Yes.
Of course. I've got one. What's the phone call you would love to get that involves your next big dream project?
My next great dream project. That's a good one, Emily.
I'm sorry, maybe it's not so lightning round after all.
It's not a lightning round. Can I take
a quick answer?
On that? I don't know.
Yeah, totally. That's fine.
What is your favorite thing that you've learned in Italian?
My favorite thing is that I can speak to my builder in Italian.
Oh, that's really important.
Yeah. There you go.
If you had to give if you had to write a letter to the future third American Viscountess Hinchingbrooke, what piece of advice would you give her?
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Well, I'm just going to correct you right there, Trey. It's okay, but there's been a lot of there's been like 8 Viscountess Hinchingbrookes, or more than that, 9, 10.
Okay.
So I don't even know what number I am. But piece of advice I would give her, I would just say, well, my advice to really anybody, to be perfectly honest, is, this is something I hold true to myself, is you only live once. Live with no regrets. Do everything you want to do it.
I love that.
Love that. Yes. Well, that's a good place to end if you'd like, Trey.
Sure. Well, Julie, Lady Hinchingbrooke, Viscountess Hinchingbrooke, Julie, you are an incredible woman. You are intelligent. You're engaging. You clearly have a path set for yourself and so many goals, and we can't wait to see you accomplish all of those. Will you please let us know when your dissertation is published?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will. I don't know when that will be, but I mean, I know when my deadline is. But yes, and hopefully it'll get published as well.
Absolutely.
We'd love that. And don't forget to go buy Julie a coffee to support her restoration project at buymeacoffee.com/Julie Montagu.
Julie J. Montagu.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Julie J. Montagu. Thank you for correcting me.
The J is for Jean, my middle name.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm so proud of what you're doing, and you've been such a delight to talk to. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks.
Well, it's night for you.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, as we close out the podcast here today, though I am not from Sugar, I can't even remember.
Sugar Grove.
Sugar Grove. My gosh, we've talked about so many fun places. Even though I'm not from Sugar Grove, please come join us in Sugar Grove in our hearts, and please come join us for the next podcast. This episode, along with every other episode, is always dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, critic, encourager, and fantastic friend. Find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. We stream on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitch. For updates, announcements, and more, please follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thank you, everybody, and have a luminous day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.